everyone. Welcome to Pragati Vichar Literature Festival 2023, organized by Frontlist Media. And this year's theme is Taking Humanity Forward. So, today we all are present here to celebrate the love for literature and discuss the pivotal subject matters prevailing in our society and establish engaging conversation with your favorite authors as well as your audience. So, today we have Anita Krishan with us for the PVLF 2023. Welcome, ma'am, and we are immensely glad to have you on board today.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
So, born in Shimla in 1955, Anita Krishan spent the initial 22 years of her life in this pristine Himalayan town and earning her master's degree in English literature from Himachal University and moving on to a career of introducing the lights of the language to her young learners. In a long tenure as an educator, she has enriched the lives of countless students with the mystery of narrative. A versatile writer, each of her literary arts related to different genres, from the joys and the travels of life to the terrorism that has brought the world to its tenterhooks, to now the paranormal. She has traveled extensively around the globe, absorbing the diverse human ethos and culture, and she is a well-known and a best-selling author of fiction in India today, an author of serious fiction. Her books deal with some of the most important issues with affect contemporary society. She is also a poet and respected um, columnist with the Indian Economist. Her latest work, Ghost of the Silent Hill, was published in January 2020, which is published by Fingerprint Publisher. So thank you, and I'm feeling like that your book, Ghost of Silent Hill, is spooky. Yeah, some that my answer that you whatever you're gonna answer that will be engaging today. So I'm looking forward to it. So
Yeah,
today,
thank you.
so today's session theme is storytelling, and she is mastering storytelling, Anita ma'am. So under this session theme, we have topic if you have got it haunted. So yeah. So ma'am, your book Ghost of Silent Hills is a compilation of horror tales. From where did you find the inspiration to craft these stories? And yes, it's based on actual events.
Well, each time I'm posed this question, I go back to my childhood. Like you have already told the listeners and the audience that I was born in Shimla. So I lived in like with my family in a quaint little cottage in the outskirts of Shimla town. And it was surrounded by a dense forest of pine and oak trees. And with the nightfall, silence and darkness would descend the landscape. But particularly, I remember the winters. So in Shimla, we used to have a lot of snowfalls. Actually, global warming is seen very clearly on the mountains now. The temperatures would plunge down to -10 very commonly, and we used to have 4 or 5 very heavy snowfalls. Means the landscape would be covered by 2 to 3 feet of snow,
Hmm.
and we used to have winter break as children. So you can imagine that children would be house arrested when we had very heavy snowfalls and very low temperatures. And then something more would be added to that. The cold would snap the electricity, overhead electricity wires. And for days, we wouldn't have electricity. So you
Okay.
can imagine cold and dark. So, sitting as a whole family around a fireplace in the dim light of kerosene lanterns and telling stories to each other. And very often, there would be spooky stories on supernatural. Some that I was the youngest of my siblings, so
Okay.
I would mostly be a listener. So to be a writer or to have your own understanding of things, you have to be a good listener first.
Right.
So I used to listen to those stories told by my siblings or my parents sometimes, and some of them were real. Some of them what my siblings had read, and the romance of listening to those ghost stories has stayed with me. Those memories are, they were spooky at that time. They're very scary. You wouldn't even like to go to the washroom after
Washroom.
that.
Absolutely.
And but the romance was so beautiful, and everyone loves to listen to a good ghost story. And I had a storehouse of them. So I thought, let me share with my readers.
Okay.
Yeah.
So these are your childhood stories that you have heard from people.
Not all, not all,
Not all.
all. Some of them I carried. Some of them, like I said, they are based on real life incidents. So those incidents happen with our acquaintances, friends, or even relatives, very close relatives, in fact. So I grew up with those stories. I had that stories with me all the time
Okay.
till actually I was writing on absolutely different topics, different genre.
Hmm.
And there's always a gap when you have finished a book and then you're thinking about what to do next. That was the time when I last book was published, despite Stolen Dreams,
Hmm.
and which was a sequel of Tears of Jhelum. And these two books are based on terrorism in Kashmir.
Hmm.
And when I was thinking now what, because when you become a writer, writing becomes your passion.
Right.
It's with me. I'm passionate about my writing. So I was looking for a topic, and my son just said, "Mama, you have a lot of ghost stories. You used to tell us ghost stories. Why don't you document them?" So
Right.
I thought, yeah, that would be a good idea. Let me try that. And you know, this ghost stories turned out to be a national bestseller.
Yeah. Yes.
So, but
Actually.
yes, while I was writing these ghost stories, many people came to share when they came to know. So I have the old ones. That's why, if somebody's read the book, they know that it's a combination of the old stories which happened in 15s and 60s, and the latest one, even of the century. So
Okay.
it's a mixture.
So you have mentioned that your story, your book is based on real events. So are there any fictional stories there in the book, or just true ones?
Each story's core element is true.
Okay.
So the each story, that's why I wouldn't mislead my readers. Each story, the true element, but like I've written in the latest book, an author needs just a spark to start an inferno.
Right.
So so just a little spark, and you cook with your imagination the rest of the story. So it's a mixture, of course, but they are based on every incident. A bit of it was absolutely true,
Okay.
shared with me. Yes.
So you have experienced anything paranormal that you have mentioned in your book, or just your acquaintance stories, your own stories? And
Yeah, fortunately, no, I have not experienced anything spooky. But yes, they are acquaintances, very close ones. So, like I like to share, my nieces, my brothers, two daughters, their story is there in this. It is titled The Third Housemate. They lived in Delhi. So
hmm.
that is why, because I was combination. So the stories which are not, set in the hills is in part two of the book. And they lived in Delhi, and they had a very spooky experience. I'll just give, naturally, since we are talking about storytelling, and audience would be interested in that.
Sure.
So they were living in that house. They had just shifted to that new apartment. It was the topmost floor in near City Fort Auditorium,
Mhm.
and they started immediately experiencing something, strange, like some noises in the kitchen, something falling all of on its own. Then one day, the elder sister, she was alone in the house, and she was about to sleep, and somebody right behind her said hello, very clear hello she heard, and she was alone in the apartment. There was no one around, so she definitely got spooked.
Yeah.
And then, the very next day, when her sister came back from her tour, and they were sleeping, and at night, the younger one tells her sister, and it was peak summer season, and she told her sister, please Didi, don't fiddle with the cooler. I'm feeling very hot, don't stand in front of it, and don't fiddle with it. And
Hmm.
her sister was lying next to her, says, no, Manisha, I'm here. And both of them saw a shadow in
Mhm.
front of the cooler. What was that shadow? So they didn't know. Of course, they got spooked. The very next day, I got a call from them So these are the family stories. And another one, now we can say it's hallucination of a mind or out of extreme fear or something.
Mm.
These incidents didn't have anything of that. In fact, my younger niece said, I was highly excited. I immediately jumped out of the bed, switched on the light, and the
Mm.
shadow disappeared. There was nobody there.
Mm.
Then, so another one, because which I just want to tell why I believe and why I am writing these stories
Mm.
is because I'm convinced that these things did happen with them. So my son-in-law is
Mm.
from Australia.
Mm.
He's an Australian, and there is one story which is set in Australia. So he very clearly remembers as a child meeting a young girl who happened to be her sister's friend. But when he met her that last time, he didn't know she was already dead. And he was a child of 3 or 4 years old. And he ran to his mother saying, Mama, why is she sitting on my bed? When I want to sleep, she is sitting right in the middle of my bed. Please tell her to go away. And mother asks her, whom are you talking about? So whatever name he took, the Lucy is the name in my book. So he says,
Mm.
Lucy is sitting on my bed. And the mother was shocked. Lucy had died just a month ago. So
Mm.
the child didn't know anything. So, we have no explanation for such things. And though they are not my direct experiences, but
You
whosoever,
believe in all stories.
yeah. But the way, it has happened and the way these people have come to narrate their experiences with me, I
Mm.
believe. I believe that.
Yeah, that's definitely spooky. Yeah.
Yeah.
So my next question to you: each of
Yeah.
your stories paint a picture of evolution of society. So there are some of related to society, your acquaintance, or even your even I mentioned in the introduction that terrorism of Kashmir and most of the things that you have covered in your story. So how did this unique idea cross your mind? Because there are some authors who are sticking, specific genre, but you are experiencing different genres. So yeah, what your take on this?
See, when you're talking of aberrations in the society, we always have aberrations in the society. You see, there's always there always cruelty or there's always murder. So it is said, if I go very far, our Holy Gita propounds the theory of spirit leaving the body after the end of one's life, and that spirit is indestructible. So it is eternal. Nothing can destroy the spirit. And there are instances of rebirth. You're born again, maybe in another life, another place. So at times, it is also believed that people who have violent deaths,
Mm.
like sudden accidental death, or suicide, or maybe murder, these spirits, for certain reason, do not find peace immediately. So
Right.
they get lost
Mm.
before, because uh well, if we can go very deep into this, like people with near death experiences,
Mm.
there are thousands of cases, thousands of cases. Only one, Dr. Raymond A. Moody, if you've heard of his book, very famous book, Life After Life,
Mm.
he documented cases of thousands of his patients. He was a psychoanalyst, and I think he was also a psychiatrist. Thousands of his cases is recorded, and uh, most of the people, they speak of the same thing, same experience.
Mm.
Seeing themselves from a elevated position, they know exactly how the doctors are trying to resuscitate the body when they are dead, in fact, for some time. And some of them even have the experience of passing through a long tunnel and then coming to a beautiful bright light, which is very joyful,
Mm.
and also meeting somebody there, somebody who is very calm and quiet and very loving. So that's perhaps the God figure, like we think of. Now, my question in these cases, once again, is that why, how come all the people, if the doctors, they say that it could be hallucination because of the oxygen deprived brain,
Mm.
then why the same experience for all of them?
Mm.
And even doctors they get flabbergasted because when these patients, they come back and they explain to the doctors what they had seen uh, in the ICU or the operation theater. their explanation, it surprises them because nobody else could have explained the way they explain, and like having seen it from above what was going on. So these are things which set us thinking that, of course, there is something more than what we know. And then again, back to your question, aberrations in the society. So those spirits, they're lost, and till they find their salvation, probably they are around. And I think my particular, analysis is that, see, when we cannot hear certain above certain level of noise,
Right.
right? So
Immediate tendency is there. Yeah.
yeah, so probably we are, as a human vision, we cannot see beyond certain level.
Yeah.
And this is then another, they're supposed to be living in another realm. But some people, for certain reason, they are able to see beyond what normal humans can see.
Right.
Like we talk of mediums, no? Mediums can talk to spirits. Not everybody can become a medium.
But a few.
Mm, only few. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So my next question. So, are you planning to exploring this genre more further, or will the readers will see more installments in the current series, The Ghost of the Silent Hills, or just it's a standalone novel?
Uh, well, since I don't know, we already have the sequel, another one. It
Okay.
is titled, yeah, Ghosts in the Dark Silence. Yeah. And more of these stories, slightly, I've tried to change the way I've, narrated these stories, but the same genre, of course, on paranormal, the spooky, and once again set based on real life experiences.
I have to tell that you have a countless of stories to share with the audience. Yeah, because
Yeah, I think I've exhausted my quota for the time being of ghost stories.
right.
Let's see if I get to meet people and those who have experience. So I don't know, but right now I think that's my limit.
So, how many
Two
stories
books.
are there in a book? In a one.
But first one has 10 stories,
Okay.
and the second one has five, which are much longer, but
Okay.
five stories in the second one.
So, I have mentioned in your introduction that you are also an educator for years. So, being an educator for years, what influenced your transition towards writing?
Well, I've been a teacher of English language. So, as a teacher of English language, you want to, for your students, you want to inculcate more interest in them for reading. First thing towards learning any language is to be a good reader. So, to make them, interested in stories, you are to tell them stories.
Yeah.
So, I used to tell them a lot of stories in the class to make my class very interesting. And I think from telling stories to them, I started writing my own stories.
Wow.
It also, actually, my writing also began for another reason. See, I have come from the mountains.
Right.
And if you have lived on the mountains for most of your young life, when you leave them, you leave part of your heart there. And
Right.
that's what I did, and so I came down to plains. First, I lived in Chandigarh for many years. Then I shifted to Delhi, and now I'm in Gurgaon. But I've always been away from the mountains ever since I got married, right?
Okay.
So I had that kind of nostalgia in me about the mountains, the beauty of the mountains, my beautiful growing up years there, the cherished memories. And my first book was based on those memories I had of growing up with my little dog and our adventures and the beauty we lived in. It's titled Fluffy and Me. But it came as first book as Running Up the Hill. So the second edition came as Fluffy and Me.
Okay.
So that's from where I started my writing career. And once I started writing, there was no looking back.
Yeah, definitely. Right, right. So, being an author and poet, which of the two crafts do you enjoy the most work in? What is the most significant difference between the two, according to you?
See, poetry writing is something that requires a lot of emotions, right? So for me, it is very sporadic exercise. So I write poetry when, there's something, the beauty that catches me, or I'm in a highly emotional state, happy or sad. So it is very sporadic. But writing prose is my, main thing, mainstream of my life right now. So prose is like every day, unless and until I have written something and I've allowed my imagination to run, I think I've not completed my tasks of the day.
Okay.
So every day I do some writing, yes.
Okay.
Poetry is once in a while.
Okay, once in a while. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, what advice would you like to give to those aspiring horror genre author? So anything
Mm.
that you want to share with them?
Yeah, of course. One thing I would like to say that whatever they write, it should come from their hearts. And secondly, writing is also, you have a responsibility towards society. So what you are writing and what the others are going to read, and some of them are going to be very young, impressionistic minds, impressionable minds. They should be very careful about what they're writing.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it makes a lot of difference. You can influence the society in a very big way. So writers can do that a lot. So it should be genuine from the heart
Mhm.
and, you know, responsible writing.
Right. So you just mentioned that you used to tell stories to your students, right? So how important is storytelling for young generation to, get exposed with?
Absolutely, very, very important. It's very significant. You know, all my students now, of course, they are all grown up with their own children studying in schools and all that. But they remember those stories very clearly. They remember, those times. And the way I would go each in the class, and the first demand would be, "What story are you going to tell us today?" So, I was unfortunately, our education system is such that I was confined to also completing my syllabus. These are the books, and you have to finish them, and they have to sit in an exam, and then have to clear those exams. So that responsibility. Otherwise, I would have been a teacher with just storytelling.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
I agree with you.
because I had their 100% attention when
Right.
I was telling them stories.
So, I would like you to please, could you please tell us one more story? It would be great.
One more story.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'll narrate one which has been a very popular, my family story, which
Okay.
is there in the first book, Hosts of the Silent Hills. And I'll just narrate the incident, because other whatever I have written, other things, of course, but the core incident I will just tell you.
Okay.
So it happened in sometime in 1956, 57. I was a very small child, an infant at that time, in fact. My uncle, my father's younger brother, was an engineer, and he was posted in a place called Juri, which
Hmm.
is near Kinnaur border, near Kinnaur. I mean, a very remote area of Himachal. And you can imagine the roads and the kind of places they were in 1950s.
Right.
So the roads were not well made and everything. All right. So he was posted there. And my father, and I mean, like my family, we lived in Wildflower Hall, which is a five-star hotel today. But after independence, it was turned into an agricultural school.
Okay.
And my father was the principal of that agricultural school, college, whatever you would call, it is in Wildflower Hall. Now, Wildflower Hall, even today, is a building, beautiful building situated on the top of the hill. It belonged to actually the Commander-in-Chief of Indian Army, Lord Kitchener, when we were under the British rule. So
Hmm.
this building belonged to him. And then when he left, the British left the country, that
Okay.
it came to the Indian government, and Indian government, donated it for agricultural studies. And my father was the principal there. And this building was on the top of the hill with nothing around it except a dense forest. cedar, pine, fir forest.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Even these are dense forests today. If you go to it is this area is called Charabra, and this building is called Five Star Hall. It is Broy's Five-Star Hotel today.
Okay.
So now my uncle decided to come to visit us,
Okay.
and he left very late in I think the bus left at in the evening, and he finished his work in the morning, and then he was taking off, and he didn't want to waste his holiday, so he took the evening bus. And probably there were only one or just excuse me, there were only one or two buses plying in that area those days. And what happened right in the middle of that journey, the bus broke down. And broke down. In fact, the axle broke. It struck, and that if even today that it's a very very tough terrain, that particular road, because there are a lot of rocks that keep falling down. So it's very got a lot of loose rocks. So a rock had fallen, and I think bus driver didn't see in the dark, and he hit that, and the axle broke, and they were stuck in the middle of nowhere. And there wouldn't be any traffic at that time or nothing. So at 12 o'clock at night, an army truck came. So army truck from the Kinnaur Kalpa side was coming, and they got a lift. There were about 5-10 passengers in the bus. They got a lift in the truck, and my uncle was dropped below the building at around 2:30 at night, middle of the night. And all of a sudden, the truck went, and it was absolutely, dark till his eyes got adjusted to the dark. I think it must have been a crescent moon or something, a little bit light. And then he had to walk up it's a 10-15 minutes uphill walk to reach the building. And when he started to walk, a lady appeared from nowhere and started following him. She followed him right till the building. First, he got scared. He thought, he wondered who the lady was. How could somebody be there in the dense forest in the middle of the night? And then, when he reached the building, he saw she wasn't there anymore. So he thought that probably she was some lady, just like she lived here around in the south, trying to get his company. He turned. He went, there was a cottage. He went towards the cottage. He climbed up the stairs, saw the door. The door had a big lock. When he turned back, he saw the lady was standing right behind him once again. And that was the time he had a closer look and realized she was not human. It was, it was something else. So that's a very, very famous, family story. And it's a second story of my book, Ghost of the Silent Hills.
And I must say that it's quite spooky.
Spooky, that it's. So my uncle, actually, he was there. He lived just a few months ago. He passed away. He was at the age of 90, beyond 90.
So he was
Till
90 years old that time.
that time was a young man when he passed away a few months ago, no?
Okay, okay.
So, but that time he was a young man. He was barely 24, 25 years old.
Okay.
And, we would, each time I met him, I would ask him, what about that lady? He says, oh, that's a mystery. Don't remind me of her, that mystery woman.
Yeah.
And he says, definitely she was a ghost,
Right,
some wandering spirit. Yeah.
Absolutely. So thank you so much, Anita ma'am, for joining us today. And I must say that I just had a very delightful conversation with you today. And I'm hoping that the audience would also enjoyed it today. So thank you.
You're most welcome, and had a wonderful session. Thank you for inviting me, and I'm sure that hope that everyone enjoys the session.
Right.
Thank you, and bye bye.